Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Monster Report live here on YouTube and on Facebook. Your host here, Nick Adam, and it has been a few, days, weeks, or whatever since we've had our last live stream, but we're glad you're here. So definitely feel free to join us in the chat as we speak with our guest on the Monster Report. We're a show highlighting those entertaining creatures of film history. And of course, we talk a lot of Kaiju, a lot of Godzilla, American monsters, foreign monsters, monsters of all kinds. We don't discriminate. And I also love to highlight Kaiju content creators. Content creators like myself who do YouTube, who might create music, who might create media of any kind. If they're also people who create figures, something I, don't do, but I collect figures. And of course, reading media, reading comics. And so I'm going to bring in my guest, Matt of Sector-7, and we're going to talk to him a little about his Kaiju content creation. Matt, how are you doing today?
I'm doing really well, Nick. Thanks very much for having me on.
All right. Interesting that we got to meet on Facebook, and I got to explore a little about what you've already had kind of in the works about Sector-7. So just kind of give us a brief overview of what Sector-7 is, and we'll kind of get into some of the growth that's happened and what you hope to accomplish with it.
Yeah. So Sector-7 is essentially, my vehicle. About 20 years ago, I created a kaiju named Nagara, and it was kind of my way of playing with Godzilla. A lot of folks back then were doing fan fiction, and I'm like, I want my own sandbox to play in, something I could actually do something with one day. And one thing, life happens and you get distracted and things like that. And just now's the time. And I've got a great partner. We're working together on that. But essentially, Sector-7 is about a utopian future pending a tragedy during the Cold War. It's like an alternate Earth. During the moon landing, there was a nuclear holocaust. The Cold War kind of turned very, very hot, as I like to say, and humanity had to regroup in colonies. But out of that grew this really prosperous, united human race, and led by the science of one man named Solomon Brand, and he kind of revolutionized all these different technologies. So the world is kind of cool and unique, and Ron's done an amazing job with that. Basically, all of a sudden, there's these disasters that start happening, and they come to find out there's some giant monsters to blame, and there's a big political plot kind of driving that forward. So that's kind of the 30-second gist of it.
Okay, and so we'll get into some of the art and some of the concept work you've already had accomplished here in a second. Tell me kind of your background into either Kaiju, entertainment industry that got you interested in giant monsters, and of course into generalized sci-fi, fantasy, fiction, all of those things that conglomerated into making you the fan you are and into the creator you are.
Absolutely. So my love of kaiju began probably when I was about 3 years old, and I stumbled upon my oldest brother's VHS tape of Godzilla versus Megalon. It just something clicked, and as I like to say, I fell in love with Godzilla and never really grew out of it. So and I just remember so much fun in the 90s going into video rental stores and department stores and hunting down VHS tapes. There was no internet. I had no idea how many movies there were out there and things of that nature. So it was just kind of there was always this like sense of adventure going into a store and finding a new kaiju VHS. And as a teenager and as the internet grew, became part of the community. And, that was kind of, like I said before, what kind of spurned me to, try and create my own sandbox to play in. I've always wanted to be a writer. I have a master's in English, and I'm currently an educator. And now is the time. It's like, since I was in first grade, I've really wanted to be a writer and an author, and I've been kind of pursuing some of those things this year. I had a book of poetry published that is soon to be available, like on Amazon and stuff like that. It's already done. it's on ISBN or it's got an ISBN and things like that. So it was just this was my thing. I've just been fascinated by kaiju most of my life.
Yeah, and so some of the inspirations that you draw from, and I guess that led you into writing. Was illustration also kind of a part of that?
Yeah, absolutely. So I used to draw a bit myself, and then it was like I guess what it came down to was I was looking to write the story, and the more I thought about it, what really occurred to me was how visual of a medium like the kaiju genre is. Like it's so much more impactful. I feel like not to put anyone down who's out there writing kaiju novels and things like that, but I just love the imagery of it. And I really thought about it. I'm like, well, obviously I'm not a filmmaker. I don't have the budget to make a movie that would do my idea justice. So I'm like, what about a comic book? And that kind of led me to start thinking about that about a little over 10 years ago. And lo and behold, one day I was at work and a gentleman came in to make some copies. I'm looking at his artwork and I'm like, oh, this is really incredible. And sure enough, it was now one of my best friends, Ron Mozicki, who's also my the co-creator and the artist on this. So that kind of started everything off in that direction as far as illustration and things. It really expanded from there. It went from a few pieces of Nagara and things like that. Now we have full-blown pages done.
Yeah, I want to bring up some of the illustrations. Speaking of here in a second, so you kind of talked about the visual medium and also a medium that you could attain, being where you are. That's something you can work on from home. Is a comic book. Yeah, I can't make a film either. It's way out there. It's a big conglomeration of budgets and other creators, and it's just such a huge unachievable kind of like in where we are in life. We're not Hollywood filmmakers, right, or in Japan doing tokusatsu, but something even like YouTube, which you're also a YouTuber as well, that's something you could do from home, and it's something that's brings fans together, creative ideas together. And I always thought that was something that long time ago was kind of unachievable. Now we can do these things with our phone, and it's so like, wow, the world opens up to us. So yeah,
absolutely, I completely agree. And it's just a matter of really like saying, okay, now's the time. Like, no more procrastinating, and I want to make this happen. Like, I'm a fan. Like you said, I really think that because I'm a fan, that other fans are going to enjoy the monsters that we've created as well.
Absolutely. So let's get over here to let's see if I can get StreamYard to do what it is I'm supposed to be doing here and share. Yeah, I know, right? Okay, here we go. We've got some illustrations that are just amazing. So if there's any that you'd like me to specifically highlight here while you talk about them, I've got your whole list that you sent me.
Not in particular. I love this image. It's just got a really cool feel to it, kind of a little bit of a retro feel in some ways. You mentioned science fiction, and growing up I was huge into Star Wars and things like that. So when writing my characters, that's probably one of my biggest influences. Is Star Wars. So we wanted big, bold characters, stuff that resonated with people and seemed really interesting. And I just see the Butler as asking about a program we use. I believe Ron uses Procreate on an iPad. So that would be what he does the majority of his drawing in now. He does do, pencil and paper, but this is so much faster for him.
And the Butler is, by the way, my assistant at work, actually, where I work. So, and I know he's recently gotten into iPad art, so he'd be very interested in hearing illustration software and techniques. So, yeah, throw any of your tips and tricks his way. Also, thank you, Frank Murray, for joining us. If you're in the chat, if you're watching today, smash that like button. Of course, like, subscribe, all of those great things. Okay, so Procreate, that's the software you're talking about, right? Yeah.
Yep.
He's on the right track then. Awesome.
And there's some Android apps as well if you're if you prefer a Samsung device or whatnot, but they have comparable ones or at least something close.
Awesome. Is this cover art, by the way?
Yeah, that's one of our covers actually. So he drew, I want to say I I know for sure. We have three different covers that Ron drew, and then there is one that was done by Rob Willis, which he's actually like a comic book veteran. There's another cover actually, the one in color there.
This one. Okay.
There's another one there which has a close up. The character in front there, that's one of our main protagonists. Tetra Primrose is her name, and then of course our main monster behind her is Nagara. And there's another color image there that was done. The color scheme is kind of like a variant on this one, but this was done by a good friend of mine named Trevor, and we were kind of campaigning a little bit for some views around Memorial Day. So we had this prepared for Memorial and Independence Day, and we thought that was kind of funny there. But actually, the one right above it is the Rob Willis cover, and he just did a phenomenal job. Like, absolutely crushed it. We really appreciate Rob and his work on that. It is quite the piece.
That's some interesting, like the texturing here. I mean, this brings you down to the grit and grime of reality, doesn't it? The stubble, hairs everywhere, just destruction, mayhem, and this very dystopian, like you said, dystopian kind of future that you're portraying with this. Is it? Would it be fair to say it's along the lines of a cyberpunk-ish kind of style?
It does have elements of that. It's what I appreciate about Ron was like the kind of tech he's using and how he kind of developed the tech. And it is interesting to me because we wanted to kind of get away from just your basic copy and paste Blade Runner and be done with it type of look. So he did some artwork where he's got like very old, he's actually got like a horse and buggy that's been retrofitted with like these, this new tech that is generating lift for it and things like that. So it's really interesting. There's some cool concept art that's going to be up on the campaign. Some folks I think are asking about that. We are moving to Kickstarter. I think that was one of our initial mistakes. We've been starting out on this trail for several months now, and we kind of went with a newcomer and Fund My Comic, and I just don't think there's enough eyes there yet, especially because this to me is much more of a kaiju book than appealing to like the superhero crowd or the indie comic crowd. So I think on Kickstarter we're going to get a lot more eyes on us and things like that. And we're going to take some time too this time around. We really jumped in head first, and no one really knew who we were, and we tried to promote it like right off the bat, and it was a great learning experience for sure.
Sure. Yeah, it is a hard thing to really get the search engine optimization rolling on, kickstarting, crowdfunding, and getting attention on your product. It's an uphill battle, and there are the gatekeepers. I mean, I'm not gonna lie, they're out there. It's hard to get across that. So, I applaud your efforts, and I know that helping out any way we can here and bringing my audience to your audience. I hope that there's some support there. Helmy's in the chat. Helmy all the way from Australia. He loves the cover art, so that is awesome. Thank you. And the Butler likes the detail. So yeah, get to work on that Procreate and see what you can come up with. And you answered Frank's question there about the at least the Kickstarter side of things. So yeah.
Yes. So they said they should be approved within the next 5 days. We'll be accepting signups basically. And that's what we're going to look to do for a few months is we're going to look to promote and get people signed up and really spend some time trying to get folks aware of it before we go ahead and launch a campaign this time. That way we're not trying to, we're not putting the cart before the horse, as it were. But yeah, so, and it will be an ongoing mini series. We have future arcs planned, but this is going to be one like 4 or 5 issue story arc. They're going to be like double length books, so like probably 40 pages each, and then the last one will be 80 pages if I remember correctly. And actually, if you like the page above it there, this is Ron's art, some of
Oh wow,
the interior art. And I mean, even in black and white, I think it looks phenomenal. Like
absolutely.
he does an amazing job with this. I absolutely love his artwork. It's beautiful. It's moody. Has plenty of detail and interesting angles, which you just don't get a lot of the time. So I'm very very excited about what people are going to be getting.
Yeah, and feel free to tell me any pictures you'd like me to switch to. Also, you shot me the link. Is that something that can go public yet, or
We can send it public. Unfortunately, I think if you go there, it's just going to take you to a dead end on
okay?
Kickstarter right now. But we do, like I said, I've been moving the campaign to there and getting that set up so people can sign up. So it's up to you. If you want to share that out, people can copy and paste
Yeah,
the link and just sort of save that somewhere. It should be within the next 5 days that goes live for signups.
absolutely. I'll just go ahead and throw it on the screen, and then I'll put it here in the chat as
Absolutely.
well, so people can go ahead and bookmark that link for future needs. And that'll be just really awesome to get some traction going on that. Let me copy and paste that. So yeah, so you talked about the style. You talked about at least the kind of story approach to it, the elements of this. Would you say that this is got some inspiration from some other content? If I know you talked about a little Blade Runner, but at the same time, not trying to be
Right.
exactly Blade Runner, but if they're some of the noir aspects, I guess, of Blade Runner and some of the other, cyberpunk content.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny because I can't think of another kaiju related story or sci-fi story where I can say this really pulls from. It's got kind of a complex backstory. The elderly gentleman that you see there, that's our character Solomon Brand. His story really begins like in our story set in like present day kind of thing, but the important elements of the story take place in three eras, beginning in Nazi Germany. And I know that's like usually the big bad of everything, but they're not really our bad guys. It's more just a catalyst to get the ball rolling. And what happens is they were into all sorts of experimentation and things like that. And in our story, Solomon is a basically a prodigy in genetics. He's way ahead of his time as far as those things go. And the Nazi regime ends up kidnapping his family and forcing him to work in these top secret facilities to create a super soldier. And oops, their first test subject, the growth hormone works too well, and it becomes a giant monster, and that's going to be Nagara. In fact, in that one up, he becomes giant, and unfortunately, well, actually, fortunately, for the world, he can't really be controlled. So they just have to keep him sedated, and they build this incredibly large facility underground that eventually is named when they well it's kind of a little bit more complicated, but if essentially when Brand names these different sectors, he leaves this one last because he leaves it off most of the document notes and things like that. He wants to keep it as hidden as possible, especially as the war drags on and higher ranking officials are killed off, and newer ones are not privy to the locations of these places. So that's the significance of Sector-7. That is the underground facility where Nagara is eventually stored. And he moves on to another facility where he creates 6 new monsters. And these ones are specifically designed to be subservient and be controlled. And then mysteriously, for reasons that to be revealed later, he kind of disappears, and these things are never unleashed before the end of the war. We all know how the war ends. flash forward about a couple of decades, and we have the moon landing, and we're in the middle of the Cold War, of course. And I don't know, did I send you the page? If you scroll through them for a second, there's a page where the gentleman's on the moon.
I'm down here. Let's see here.
But essentially, during the moon landing, tensions with Russia kind of come to a head. Maybe I didn't send that one. I apologize if not. Oh, there
yeah.
it is.
The very bottom?
Yep, that very bottom one.
Oh, yeah, this one's very cool. Yeah.
Yeah. So what you're actually seeing there, and Ron does, again, an amazing job with this, is that first image is the reflection of planet Earth in why am I forgetting his name? Neil Armstrong. There we go. Yeah. Neil Armstrong's helmet. And you see him crying behind the visor as he's looking back at the Earth, and all these nukes are being set off, right? Because, well, he knows he's never going home, kind of thing. So, that becomes this incredible tragedy. Humanity ends up regrouping in colonies, mostly in the southern hemisphere, where and the area that is no longer habitable by humans due to nuclear fallout, we've dubbed the Veil, and it is highly contaminated. You can't go in there without a great deal of protection. And yeah, so this is our new world. And Solomon reappears suddenly. He shows up, and no one really knew who he was back then. He was, of course, kept very hidden. But he reappears, and he introduces a lot of the tech and the futuristic stuff that we're going to see. That really, for the first time ever, no one really is in need of anything. You will see older technology fused with newer technology in order to kind of reuse resources and that. But as far as healthcare goes, people are living far longer, which explains why in the present day of the story, why he's still alive. And really, people have plenty of food, and other than some non-renewable resources, which are far more scarce, like metals and things like that. People are relatively well taken care of at the start of our story.
Interesting. Yeah. I love this idea of what, you're seeing across this with the different panes, the comic book style, but also some of the more realistic looking style. You got the nuclear kind of side of things too, which was always, that Cold War feel and fear that was happening. And it's like the what if of of history, of real history, our history. And how thank the Lord some of these things didn't occur, but it's like what could have been if a mistake was made, if tensions became worse and worse. Those kind of what if stories. Marvel kind of did those what if stories. Yes. You remember in the comics, and those were always neat, time capsules essentially of what could have been. And it's always neat to dabble in those ideas. The inspirations for some of the illustration, do you kind of draw some inspiration from other artists or other styles that you've seen out there?
I think Ron, Ron's he's studied artists. He is the comic guy. I would say I know a lot about comics. Specifically, I would say up until the year 2000 to 2005, I was pretty well into the comic world, and I kind of drift in and out of it. I would say I'm a fan, but he is really a scholar of comic books. The way I'm a scholar of kaiju, he's a scholar of comic books. So really, we're a match made in heaven for this. And that, so he, I think if you were to ask him some of his influences, he would probably tell you, Todd McFarlane and, with his work on Spawn and things like that in the 90s, I know is one of his favorites. He would mention Graham Nolan is a big, influence on him and things like that. So he's, he really has studied it and then tried to craft his own style, in the midst of that. And he's really evolved even over the last decade. I've seen such growth out of him. It's incredible. He's amazingly talented.
And of course, starting here with these black and white images, he's working into, of course, it being fully color, I imagine, in the comic book,
Yeah,
right?
that's the goal. Is the end result is going to be fully colored. We were looking initially at getting a professional, but again, just being naive and not really knowing what we were getting into, that might not be as cost efficient
Sure.
as we need to do. But whether he does it or whether we contract a colorist, that looks to be the case. I'm trying to remember who did the colors on that one. We've had a number of people do some of those, and I'm just trying to remember who it was that did that. And that might have been, no, I don't think that was Matt Yackey. I think Matt Yackey is a professional color artist in the comic world, and he did one of our covers. I think the color cover that we showed was actually done by Matt Yackey, and he did a really amazing job with it. Just really well done. I like the kind of the soft colors. Nothing is too like beating. It's not beating you over the head with it, and it's got some interesting like flourishes in there.
And is Nagara going to be depicted in this color rather than the green, or is there?
Yeah, Ron wanted to go with something a little bit non-traditional, like the big green monster sort of thing. So, I prior to Ron's version of it, I had always colored him green, and his look has evolved some. In fact, not too long ago on one of our streams, I was showing off some of the original like concept art where he was much more inspired by like that's where kind of like those that hood comes from, is the Cobra inspiration that I had, but that was much more obvious on some of the older artwork and things like that. So the sandy yellow and the pinkish colors, those are what Ron is going with as a color palette. But I like the green too. I think it's a cool variant. Like if we ever get lucky enough to have figures made, I think it would be a neat variant version to have of him. But my
It's
friend
yeah.
Trevor did the art and the colors on that, and I don't know how I got lucky to meet all these phenomenal comic artists right here in my hometown. They're amazing.
Yeah, this is very cool, and to see the other kaiju's that you have here, coming into part of the storyline. It's not just Nagara, probably centered around that is maybe the main kaiju, kind of like Godzilla and all the peripheral monsters. But we all have our as fans, it's like, yes, we love Godzilla. We also love Angulus. We also love Mothra. We also love Rodan. So having these others to be, I don't either assume either friends or foes of Nagara.
Yeah, so this first story arc we've been working on forever, and I kind of fumbled a little bit with my words when I was describing it earlier, because it's really simple, but it's a little bit complex to describe the backstory. But essentially, present day, there's some folks that go into the Vale and they're looking for whatever these facilities. They find out about these facilities randomly on accident through some notes that they send regular expeditions into these areas to recover materials, blueprints, anything they can get information wise, and they catch wind of these facilities, and of course humans inevitably eventually want to grab for power, right? So one of our characters is wondering what he could use that's within these facilities, and sure enough they stumble upon the second six that were created, and Devira that we see here is one of them. I've tried to give them like kind of cool like little nicknames, just things that I really love that give a character a little bit of spice. So I've called her Hunger Incarnate, and she's got some inspiration, very alien looking, got some sea life inspiration there with the her mouth is almost like a lamprey eel, and just kind of grotesque. And these are going to be unleashed upon the unsuspecting public. Like I said, we start in a really utopian future that becomes rather dystopian in the process. And I love Ron's work on this one because the woman running towards the foreground reminds me of those old Godzilla VHS from the 90s.
Yeah, yeah, very over the top artwork of trying to sell what it is and beyond what the movie would do. Like you talked about that Megalon VHS art. If I had to assume, maybe it was the one where Godzilla and Megalon are on the World Trade Center. But there were thousands.
I actually still have those VHS. I have a number of VHS still, and yeah, just the over the top artwork. Very, I just love the retro quality of this one. Like he did an amazing job with that, and those old VHS are so nostalgic for me. So it was right up my alley. But yeah, Devira is one of the 6. Essentially, Nagara is woken up because they need something to combat this man who's controlling these monsters and using them to essentially blackmail the world into his control and his power. So Brand, being the creator and the originator of these monsters, he knows that there's one out there that is still there, and while he can't be controlled, he tries to come up with a way that maybe they can serve the same interests. And I'll let the story kind of illustrate how that happens. But so Nagara becomes a savior of mankind, although maybe not intentionally.
Interesting, yeah. And then you have this other kaiju, the Bygone.
Bygone, yeah. So he's got kind of like a turtle and like a worm thing going on. And the originally when I pitched this, I told him I wanted like, this heavily armored turtle-like creature that if you knocked him onto his back, which is like almost every turtle's weakness, that he would just reverse his legs and keep on going. Like it wouldn't even stop him. So he came up with a look for him that I think just really works. And either way he gets knocked around, he's going to just keep coming. And I nicknamed him the Impervious Ballista, and that hole on his shell is a cannon. So it's going to fire a plasma weapon.
Nice. Yeah. Over the top. Love it. That is and it's got the sweet destruction that we all as kaiju fans love.
Yes. Yeah. He's I really love all of them in their own way. I spent a lot of time just like, man, as a kaiju fan, what would I want to see? Like what kinds of new monsters would I want to see? And Ron pulled them out of my head and did an amazing job with them. And that I think I also sent you let's see, I thought there was a couple more. Maybe I didn't send them all, but I thought well, there's the artwork for him up a little higher, that frog looking one.
Okay.
That is in development of him, we called him our croc frog. If you notice down below, he has a crocodilian looking tail, and of course the scaling on his belly there. But he ended up being named Zabaki, and he's I just love the look of him. He's kind of goofy and grotesque looking. I love the belly pouch there. Like it's just really different looking and just fun. Like I look at this image and I see the people in front kind of just staring up at him, and him like about to heave this boulder, and I smile. Like it looks great. Like I would love to see this in action. Like it would look so much fun.
And I was going to ask, is his eyes actually in that fold, or is he actually eyeless in a sense? Or
no, his eyes, you can see right in that. I can't
kind of.
Yes, that is his eye there. Okay. So that eye is there in that fold. Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah. I wasn't sure if he could have been something like, maybe he detected things versus seeing things like almost a heat vision or anything. But yeah, that's all of them come with their own kind of ideas. But even the fact that your eyes aren't drawn to the eyes, they're actually drawn to that mouth and those teeth. Yeah.
Yeah, it's just a really cool look, and we actually, he was a combination, like you said, a croc and, I think it's an emperor tree frog, if I remember correctly, but it had these kinda cool ridges like that, above the eyes, and it just had a really regal look to him, so, like, yeah, we're gonna go with that,
Yeah.
and that was really cool where some of those influences and development came from.
Very cool.
Um and
Yeah.
there's going to be a total of 7 kaiju in this first run. So there's a lot to work with. 2 we have yet to reveal.
Yeah.
There's another one there that I see. Obviously inspired somewhat by a rhinoceros, but his name's Zorog, and he has some tech wired right into him, and it boosts his already significant strength. So he's going to really do some damage with those fists, and they are quite devastating. Obviously we're going to show off what he can do in the book itself, but he's one of my favorites. I just absolutely. I just love how he turned out. Like when I think of the epic, Gigan or I love
Yeah.
Gueron. I know he's super cheesy, especially in the Showa era, but I always loved Gueron. So that kind of mesh of technology and flesh really always appealed to me from the Showa era, especially. So I thought this just looked amazing. I thought it was like he nailed it, like
Oh,
absolutely
yeah.
nailed the image.
Yeah, that is so cool. Actually, yeah. So love this artwork. I think people are gotta, keep, get into the supporting of what you've got when you get that Kickstarter launched, and really check out what the storyline, because it's a very compelling, interesting storyline. Whereas sometimes I feel like kaiju films neglect the human element and the connection of the human element. We're always, interested in the monsters, and obviously that's the biggest part of it. But, you know, connect me with a universe of humanity and how it connects with it. And I think I see that is what you're doing. You have important human characters that have those story arcs with their connections to the kaiju.
I am so, it makes me really smile on the inside that you said that, because that has been one of the things. And of course, I'm going to speak in generalizations here, because not ever it would be unfair to some really talented folks to just throw out blanket statements. But traditionally, I feel like we can't always seem, especially in comic books, but even in the kaiju films, we don't always get the humans right. And it ends up being a slog to just wait for the monster action, right? We're just bored out of our minds, kind of waiting for that to happen. Excuse me. And I didn't want that to be the case with Sector 7. I used to be a really big, I think I mentioned, Star Wars fan growing up, and I just had this profound love for the characters and the universe that they built. And I really wanted to build something similar. And unfortunately, as I've gotten older and they've done different things with it, I wouldn't call myself a fan of the newer stuff. But those old ones, I was just fascinated with the characters. And I really wanted to make characters that people would find memorable and form an emotional attachment to, rather than just have them be the vehicle to witness the monster action.
Yeah, it's that is, and I'm same with classic Star Wars versus Disney Star Wars. And I'm sorry if I could be the bad guy to say that, but I have not been 100% impressed with the Disney side of Star Wars. Obviously, the original trilogy, you and I are OGs. We're still, kind of
That's the one.
that's our Star Wars, the original trilogy. Yeah.
I go one step further than most people, and this may be sacrilege to some. I totally get it, but what really broke my heart initially were the prequels, and the reason being was I was such, well, one, there was a lot of contradictions with the original trilogy. I don't want to rehash all those now, but I was such a fan of the extended universe. I loved the novels. I spent a lot of time. I played the Decipher Star Wars CCG card game alongside, like, growing up alongside Magic the Gathering. So I was really invested in this world, and I felt like the prequels sort of unraveled everything I knew, or a lot of the stuff I knew about Star Wars, and it just it totally ripped me out of the experience, because I was just like, well, if it can be changed, then why am I reading these things? But I still love a lot of that really old stuff, like the Thrawn trilogy and Shadows of the Empire and things of that nature. So, but circling back around to kaiju stuff, like that was what I wanted to do. I wanted to create, like, we've got the cyborg ninja there. We haven't revealed his name quite yet, but I was like, I want something cool. Like I want to write somebody cool and intimidating, and give me that feeling like I had watching A New Hope for the first time and seeing Darth Vader force choke somebody. Like he was mysterious and intimidating and just awesome to look at. So that's what we were going for.
Yeah, and leaving a little mystery for the viewer audience, the fandom, is actually a good thing. And I like when you can leave a little bit of that mysteriousness to it. If you start over explaining it, if you start getting into the explanations, and then we're kind of let down by that, if we wanted to know where the Force came from, or the fact that I go back to that Patton Oswalt joke about the prequels when he goes and sees George Lucas and he's like, I'm making the prequels, and he's just so disappointed. You like Darth Vader? And he's like, yeah, I love Darth Vader. Well, in my movie, he's a kid and he loses his mom and it's real sad. And it's just like, oh, wow. Yeah, he's absolutely right. If you would have left that more of a mystery for me, what I had in my mind and my heart was actually better than what you could show on screen. And so if you kind of left that alone.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think all too often as fans, I think we're guilty of asking for it sometimes. Like,
True.
Oh, please give me that story, and then we get it, and it can't possibly live up to everyone's expectations. So it becomes this exercise in futility a little bit. But I also think that we've become so commercialized as a country. Like, we can't leave works of art alone either. They have to be milked for every dollar we can, and that eventually, almost inevitably, leads to them being diluted on some level, and really not being able to maintain the level of quality and care, because as they try to get all the money they can out of it, they it gets passed along to people who it's not their baby. You know what I mean? Right. And right. For me, Sector-7 is my baby. Ron will tell you that. The majority of it was Nagara and the world kind of thing started as a concept I came up with, and then together we sat down, we fleshed out characters, kaiju, the world, the tech, everything together, and he was just like you said, I couldn't ask for a better partner in that. So I got to keep shouting him out, because he's not with me tonight. So Ron, if you're listening to this on replay, I appreciate you, buddy.
Yeah, and Frank's in the audience saying, the original Star Wars 3 movies, OG, right? So yeah, and some of the extended universe to go with it, and even some of the classic, like you said, like the D&D style games that created a universe within at least the world that it existed. And if you've seen my channel recently, I've been talking about Deus Ex Machina in stories, and how even the Godzilla films have them. Yes. We still love them, even if we criticize them. But yeah, there are times when that technique is used appropriately because it exists within the world. And then there's the times that, where the heck did that come from? Star Wars now is definitely getting guilty of that in curing death. I mean, characters that die should die, and they should stay dead. Or they have this new ability that no one knew about before. Even they didn't know they had it before, and suddenly it's out of nowhere. And then as an audience, we're kind of like, oh, cool. And it's like, well, why is it I connect with that character? They're supposed to discover these things, like we're discovering the Force through Luke. He was our guide through these films. We relate to him and all that. But if now you can cure death with the Force, it's kind of like, well, why is it I need to care about these characters?
Well, right. And why did no one ever? It is mind-boggling to me, honestly. That whole, unfortunately, the Disney era got even sillier. I feel like within minutes of the Force Awakens, I'm watching, and Han and Chewie just happen to find like the Millennium Falcon like immediately after takeoff, and I'm like, wait, out of the entire galaxy, they just happen to be like right there that moment. Like, I mean, I can accept a lot, but it just got really ridiculous. I didn't like what they did to Luke's character, pretty much at all. It was just an incoherent mess for the most part. And I say that as humbly as I can. Obviously, I'm still, trying to make something of myself in the world, but I'm just like sitting there going, I'm going to toot my own horn and say, yeah, I could have done a better job plotting that trilogy out.
I think it's, sometimes when it's these stories by committee, and when they kind of come from the unique mind of a creator or a small group of creators who have a vision, you can really tell, you can really have a vision and take some risks and build the world appropriately that works for the audience that it's trying to reach, instead of trying to simply, sell popcorn, sell streaming services and subscriptions. I'm kind of getting to the point where I'm really hoping that, coming up, that there's an opportunity for Toho with -1, and that they take an opportunity now. Hollywood is, let's just say it, they're in shambles. They've got a writer strike and they've got an actor strike. And now, if you get some content from Japan, I know it's, only a film so far, but hey, there's a fandom, and there's a new, there's a new harvest out there of fans to be taken up into a MonsterVerse from Japan. And that's why I feel like I've never really been disappointed by the content, the Shin series of films that have come out, the and then the Godzilla series, of course, and the, even going to the Gamera films, and then now we're getting Gamera on Netflix. We'll be getting Monarch, of course, from Legendary. I know American, but we'll be getting some Legendary material. Is there something that's kind of coming up in the Kaiju fandom that you're pretty excited about?
I think -1 is the one that's really got me. I mean, let me just start by saying there's never been, I cannot remember a better time to be a fan than right now. Like, there is so much content coming out. I mean, everything from comics to movies to games. Like, we've got Kong Skull Island coming out, I think next month, or maybe it's November. I can't recall exactly, but just so much content is coming out, and it's incredible. But -1, from what I can tell, I haven't been that excited about a trailer since the 2014 teaser that Legendary did. And of course, we all know that became a very different movie. I've gone on at length about that one. I think that could have been, it's not a bad movie. It breaks my heart because it could have been an amazing movie, and I think it fell short of that, and very easily. But we, of course, didn't get that movie in the trailer. And this film, I think, is going to be what we thought we were getting back in 2014, and it just looks incredible. I love the tone of it. Godzilla, I don't think has looked this good. For me, I hesitate to say since the Heisei era. I absolutely love that era of Godzilla. Although G2K has a special place in my heart too. That too, but I don't know that I think, to me, a lot of folks, Legendary is their favorite, version of Godzilla. And for me, he looks a little bit more Saurian than I like. I think I prefer Heisei still to this day. So this has a lot to love. Some of the dialogue already super emotional, super impactful. I can't wait to see more of it. That's got to be my number one upcoming project that I'm looking forward to.
Yeah, it's definitely exciting time, like you mentioned, and I really think the opportunity for Japan to show off what they can do with their films, and maybe even start bringing in more of the peripheral, Godzilla series monsters in live action. Doesn't need to be tokusatsu with the suits, but CGI. I think they're improving with that, and that's Yeah, that's refreshing to see that they can compete with Hollywood on that level and don't need to spend 180 million, 200 million to do it.
Absolutely. John and I were talking about that on our stream. John Bumpus, I'm referring to, of course, he's the mastermind behind Screonk.com. And we were talking about just the weight of Godzilla in that trailer, and the feeling of like this. He was real, like he was actually there. The care that they've taken with it is absolutely incredible. There's just so much to be impressed with as far as the CGI goes. I mean, in my opinion, while Shin Godzilla, I am a fan of. I think the CGI is light years ahead of where it was in 2016.
Yeah, no, absolutely agree with that. You know, there was a lot of excitement built for Shin. There's a lot of excitement built for this one, and I think we're going to be, you know, maybe pleasantly surprised, cautiously optimistic right now. But at the same time, we have somebody who is, you know, a fan himself. Yamazaki directing it. One who comes from the idea of making a human connection in the story to the audience. And I think, you know, what we're hoping for is a Godzilla masterpiece going back to 54, which took this character so very seriously and had that human connection that we felt sympathetic for, you know, in the Dr. Serizawa, you know, and Emiko, in Dr. Yamane, you know, there was that connection that we could make to these characters, and I'm really hoping to see that through the characters in -1.
Absolutely. And some of the imagery in that original film, I think most of us have seen the Japanese version at this point where, you know, the mother is comforting her children and telling them, you know, we're going to be with your father soon. It is really a gut wrenching scene that was shocking to me the first time I saw it because I was, you know, I grew up with the Raymond Burr, you know, recut and things like that. And for the first time, like Godzilla 1985 is still, I put that on, you know, not quite on 54's level, but I still really love the Return of Godzilla. I think it's an excellent entry in the series and really has that emotional element to it in a lot of places, and I think we're going to get that again, and maybe on a level we haven't seen since the original, which is a really exciting prospect. If he can get this right, I mean, it's an amazing time to be a fan. Just
Yeah.
incredible.
And from all of the what we have in the legacy of kaiju content, whether it's Godzilla, Dai, Kong, any of these, do you find yourself with a rewatchability? I could ask what your favorite is of all of those, but I think that's a tried and true question, and that's fine if people ask that. I ask sometimes, you know, what your favorite might not be the one you find yourself rewatching a lot, because I rewatch Godzilla versus Megalon a lot with my kids, and because they enjoy it. It's got a lot of monster action. It's got a cool jet jaguar, you know, which they just love that connection they can make with him. It's got a kid character, another, you know, character they can connect with. And of course, you and I grew up with that because there was a lot of cool monster action going on in it. So, you know, but my favorite being 85, but not necessarily the one I rewatch that often because I kind of have to get into a mood to rewatch it, but I can rewatch others a little bit more often. So for you,
That's an interesting point that you're making there, and I agree. Actually, and briefly, my favorite is Godzilla versus Biollante. That's my favorite Godzilla film, but the one I probably rewatch the most, and it's because I've consistently had young children, is Son of Godzilla, and you know, in fact, I have a 3-year-old son right now who's absolutely in love with that one. He loves the baby, and you know, say what you will about Manila, but he resonates with kids. He resonated with me when I was growing up. Like, you know, I never sat there and thought, oh, that looks stupid or, you know, dumb or anything like that. I was like 4 or 5, I think, the first time I saw those, and it was right up my alley. I love the dynamic between him and his father, jumping over the tail and just playing around, and my son and I really can. Um, just relax. And I love those the kind of low intensity ones, like that are just kind of fun, because I can fall asleep to them. I can put them on in the background, and my heart's not racing like like involved in the plot. It's just they're fun. The Gamera movies of the Showa era were much the same way. Just that's why I think Gueron's one of my favorites, because it's just so silly and campy.
Yeah,
Like, it's very low stakes. You can just watch it and relax and just have fun and be a kid, and it's wonderful. So I would say Son of Godzilla is probably the one I watch most over the past I would say over the last decade, probably.
yeah, it's a seasonal movie too, and some people like to watch it in the summertime because as hot as it can get outside, they made that island cook. But sometimes it's the winter time, and you're like, that's kind of cool to put yourself into their world of this tropical island during the warm season. And so sometimes watching it in the winter makes you kind of feel good watching it, while it's cold outside. So I don't know if you kind of feel that way with it or not.
No, absolutely. It definitely actually it could go both ways, because at the end it ends with the blizzard.
Right.
Which,
Yes.
if you've ever been in Western New York, we're east of Lake Erie, and we get dumped on pretty good, and that so. But yeah, no, it does feel like a bit of a seasonal movie as well, and just has a really great summertime feel. It gets a lot of flack, but I really love the movie. It's good. The characters are solid. Uh, it's weird. Since I was like probably 5 or 6, I always just thought Reiko, out of all the ladies I've starred in Godzilla movies, I think as a little kid I had a huge crush on her. I just think she's absolutely beautiful in that movie, and she's so lovable, the way she interacts with everyone, and it just I don't know. I have fun with that movie. I think a lot of the movies that get hate, I actually love more, just because they get so much hate, with maybe the exception of 98. And that kind of goes back to well, that's an age old argument, but you were kind of saying earlier where you don't have a creator with a vision for something that they really love, and I think 98 was that case. Is I don't think they really loved it. I think they were trying to produce something to make money. But for like All Monsters Attack, I think it's a fun children's movie.
Yeah. Oh yeah, absolutely agree. It's got the rewatchability factor in it too, especially with, like you said, the kids. Takes you back when you were a kid in the VHS days, like you and I. And it's funny, the starting point, when I talk to younger kaiju fans, maybe their starting point was 2000. It might have been Heisei. It might have been, who knows where. And that has always been their Godzilla. And they've explored into other areas, but they always kind of do come back to what was their original starting point with Godzilla, and whether it was Godzilla as a solo, destructive force against humanity, or was he fighting another kaiju? And so there's some of that too, because if you started with a film where he's fighting another kaiju, seeing a solo Godzilla film seems foreign and alien, even though that's how he started. And right. So, yeah, I think that's, the world building that they did have in there, and in the Showa series, I do find compelling characters. And even though played by that studio series of actors, we kind of connect to Akira Takarada and Kenji Sahara, and all of them that, replay in different roles in different films. And I think that's, just wonderful. Even seeing some of them in the Ultraman series and other peripheral series.
Absolutely. I completely agree. And to me, like you said, I love watching the people in the Showa era now, for the most part. Ebera has a great human story that's really interesting and fun. And, the almost, got a little bit of, I don't know. To me, it almost has interesting, like James Bond feel on that island, like with the army there and the secret weapons and all that stuff. Like, I love the Showa era of films. It's what I grew up on, and I still think, as far as quality, as far as consistency goes in quality, it was probably the most consistent. Although it does, of course, get campy later on.
And I'll be remiss if I didn't ask, are you a collector of figures, home video, comics, art? A little bit of all.
All of the above. I am absolutely a fanatic for that stuff. In fact, I'll give a local store a shout out. If you guys are ever between Buffalo and Rochester, New York, come to Batavia, and there's a gentleman by the name of Bill Hume who runs Fox Prowl Collectibles. You can find him online. I highly recommend doing business with him. He's an amazing guy. But I actually was in his store a little while back and found a Bandai Legion figure just randomly. And I was like, oh my goodness, I don't know when the next time I'll ever just randomly stumble upon Legion will be. So I had to pick it up and put it on my shelf. But absolutely all the above, going all the way back to, my very first figure was the 86 Imperial Godzilla, the 6-inch version. I've got a couple of the 12s now too, but I still have my original figure I grew up with. It was like one of my two favorite toys growing up, that and the original Dragon Zord.
Oh wow, yeah. You're definitely of my generation. Yeah. So yeah, when toy collecting was definitely a treasure hunt, and there was no internet to help us find those kind of figures. Frank wants to hear the name of that store again. Shout out.
Fox Prowl, Foxprowl, Fox Prowl. And like I said, you couldn't deal with a nicer guy. He's amazing. And they have everything from they've had X Plus in there. They've got a lot of the lower end stuff. They got all kinds of other collectibles too. It's not just Godzilla and Kaiju. They got comics, Star Wars, you name it. It is a nostalgia trip.
All right, collector's paradise. So thank you again, Matt. We're actually at the end, and I'm going to give you the chance to any shout outs that you'd like, and where people can follow you, and where later on they can support you.
Absolutely. So one, I do want to thank you again for having me on. We're, of course, on Twitter and YouTube at Inside Sector-7. You can also see a new Twitter we started there for a website we're hoping to launch early next year. That's going to focus really on other indie kaiju creators, and that's going to be kaijutopia.com. Of course, want to shout out my partner Ron. Again, couldn't ask for a better artist to work with. Of course, John Bumpus, who I do our regular stream with. If you haven't seen our Kaijutopia Stompcast, you can come check us out on our YouTube channel doing that. And of course, I want to shout out a couple of folks that have really been supporters. The Mazer Squad guys, they've really been in our corner since day one. Jacob over at Kaiju United, and lastly Matt Frank, the ours. He's been on our streams before, and just been super supportive of us. So thank you to all you guys, and anyone that I may have forgotten, please forgive me. I'm getting old.
That's all good. And then I was going to mention to Frank just to bookmark that link right now.
Yes.
For later.
Yes, correct. That link, we are in review for the pre-launch phase. So we are not launching in a few days, but they are approving us so we can get people signed up and getting updates. We're going to continue to update the campaign page, but they said by the 25th, we should be live with that link.
Okay, yeah, definitely support Sector-7, Inside Sector-7. Follow on YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, and
yes.
Obviously, once you get the website for the Kaijutopia up and running too. So we'll definitely have you back on when you get some momentum going, and help you out with that again. And I'll be glad to talk some Kaiju with you, and bring my audience to you and yours to mine. And I think that's what we as content creators got to do. Work together, not against each other, and it's just the better for each of us, because we know what we love. We love this content. We love creating it and enjoying it with other fans like ourselves, and of course bringing it to all of you out there who's watching, and making it available for you guys. So again, thank you, Matt, for your time. You've been very generous with it, and I wish you all the best.
Absolutely. Likewise, Nick. Thanks so much.
Thank you. And of course, if you're out there, you got to like, subscribe, comment, all of those great things here on the Monster Report. Getting close to that 100,000 subscriber. We are going strong, and we want to get there. It's just taken some patience, and it's because of the fans. It's because of you guys out there that make any of these things possible, and that's why I want to applaud you guys out there and just continue to support all that we do. Support Sector-7, follow Matt on all the social outlets, and of course here on the Monster Report. And stick around after we go off the air here, and we'll say our proper goodbyes, Matt. But for Nick Adam here on the Monster Report, Matthew from inside Sector-7, we will catch you on another episode of the Monster Report Live, and thank you.
Night.